Welcome to our fifth panel session of the day. Now, which will be a discussion that revolves around the question, where is the FinTech roadmap leading in ASEAN? Now, with us for this session in the moderator's hot seat is Aiza Azreen. She's the former director of Boost by Axiata. Over to you.
Hi everyone, it's Aiza here. Welcome to Malaysia Tech Month 2020. I have to thank MDEC and it's also the Knowledge Group of companies for organizing such a fantastic virtual panel. I was joking with my panelists just now, I'm the thorn among the roses, but jokes aside, I'm lucky to be here, very honored. I'm amongst the titans of FinTech. They really need no introduction, but I think I'm going to introduce them a little bit. They have digital footprints. You can check their CV on the internet. But just to be fair to them, I'm going to do an introduction because they are so shy. They will be tight-lipped about their accomplishments. And these are the guys with really huge caliber and success in their own field. So I'm going to start with the godfather of payment, Mr. Chan called Leong. I think we cannot do transactions without actually having IP88 digital receipt saying that the transaction is successful. So Mr. Chan and I think we didn't really work together, but we literally worked on the e-wallet industry. And without Mr. Chan, I think Boost would not have been where it is right now. So merchant acquisitions, Mr. Chan helped us out. So we were doing all the land grabs. It didn't happen magically or overnight. It actually happened with the help of Mr. Chan. Now I'm going to go over to Chris Leong. So if you're an earnest player in the technology field and e-wallet, I'll be very surprised if you have not heard about SoftSpace and also Chris Leong. I think if I'm younger, less weary of the world, less angry with the world, I would have joined SoftSpace because what the guys are doing in SoftSpace is really, really fun. They're building things out, literally giving Mr. Chan run for his money, I think, and also coming up with, look at him, actually coming up with technology around e-payments, B2B infrastructure. So we're going to listen to Chris. I think this is where Mr. Chan and Chris would be the Pied Piper effect for FinTech. They're going to lead the way into ASEAN, Malaysia, Boleh. Then you'll be listening to him a little bit more. Then we've got merchant trade, Mr. Rafiz. So just a bit of story. I think Mr. Rafiz and I, we had somewhat like a similar journey. We were both bankers before, but I think what happened was we woke up one day and we had a moment of epiphany, and we go like, the other side is much more fun. The money is on the other side. Let's go over to the other side. So, but jokes aside, Rafiz has a fantastic stellar background as a banker. Please look him up. I was Googling him last night. And he will be telling us more about merchant trade and what they're doing. Rafiz, not to give too much away, but you don't have to answer me now, but with the acquisitions that you guys are making, is there a neo challenger bank digital in the making with merchant trade? Is my hopes and dreams? Don't answer me now. We'll talk about this later. So guys, thank you for tuning in. I heard there's about 100 people in the room. Be engaging. You know, you can ask questions. These guys are here for you to learn from, for you to listen to. As a moderator, I am in a fantastic state of not having an opinion, but I can literally probe them and just be a little bit naughty with certain things. So I'm just going to put some things into contextualizing this whole discussion. If you had not read ASEAN NEXT report by HSBC, please do, maybe after this. Just read it through because the headlines in ASEAN NEXT in the report had big, huge headlines like payments is going to triple to 1.5 trillion, right? But having said that, I mean, they're preaching to the choir really when they say 1.5 trillion in 10 years. But having said that, really, we've just ended the budget. I'm not going to be all critical or all supportive, but I can see that in the budget, there was more focus on ECS. So let's put that in our mind at the back burner that we are having this discussion, and let's just see how we're going to move things ahead. And these three guys will actually tell you that. So now I will start with Chris, right, Chris? So Chris, SoftSpace, fantastic things that you guys are doing. Merchant acquiring companies and merchants They are always, I would say, wine and dine by the partners because eventually they function as the de facto partner to acquire merchants. In your case, right, what I've learned from you is that you went onto the technical wizardry, right? You are literally pushing the boundaries with your technical capability. So can you tell us a little bit, being a B2B infrastructure, knowing that e-wallet payments is a relationship management game, how do you use technology to push ahead? And how do you use this to actually get your inroad into ASEAN? Over to you, Chris.
Thanks. I mean, I won't say that I do not need to wine and dine some of my partners and customers. I think we will need to definitely wine and dine them somehow. I mean, not literally because banks has their own no gift policy and whatsoever. But I mean, when we look into how we want to position the company, and I think we feel that there is a lot of problems or a lot of inefficiencies within the financial infrastructure. And I guess when we look into how we look in the piping, you can do a lot of merchant acquiring, you can do a lot of stuff, but if the fundamental financial piping is not efficient, due to maybe different systems are being used, due to inherently we are just following whatever is being given to us, then the problem comes into how can we add value into it, because in the day, inefficiency create costs. So somehow someone is paying for the cost and for the consumer to have a lower cost rate than whatsoever. And the way we look into it in previous way, where I think Mr. Chan will know because he's the godfather of payments, right? So he will know that in the early days, it's very difficult to get forms, it's very difficult to do things and all. So those are all inefficiencies. And I think we use the approach, of course, you can bulldoze it with money, you can bulldoze it with people. But again, we ask a fundamental question, it's like, okay, what is the principle behind all this purpose of doing things? For example, in the longest time in merchant acquiring, you need to take a signboard, picture of a signboard. Why do you need a signboard? I mean, in this kind of day and age, you don't need a signboard. But there's a principle behind the signboard. The signboard is that if you have a signboard, it means that you have a license, a business license in DBKL, then the whole purpose of the signboard picture is because of the license. And I think what we are good at is to ask a lot of questions about what is the fundamental thing about why rules are being imposed in payments. And we realize that a lot of fundamentals comes from whether it's EME, PCI, or the international standards. And being geeks ourselves, we read about it, we understand it, and we question every stage of the time being newbies. So we build technology on top of it and say, look, technology can change. The technology is going to move with data and all. Something can work out the inefficiencies. And I think that's where we do. Yep.
You kind of embrace the whole entire technology proposition from end to end. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I mean, build a platform, cut costs or efficiency with using the digital platform as well. I think you're quite familiar with the term unit of economics, right? I think so unit of economics really drives through all the investments that you're going to do. Well, thank you, Chris, for that. Hold on to that thought, because I'm going to go to Mr. Chan. I should be calling him Godfather Chan. So we hear from Chris, Mr. Chan. It's a completely, he's rubbing his head. So we hear from Chris already that they are quite dynamic, progressive, going on different directions, really, really looking into the market in a different way. Mr. Chan, I do not want to insult you. It's so juvenile if I'm going to ask you about your growth story, because IT88 is already a titan. But I'm going to put another dimension into the questioning. Let's just do this, Mr. Chan. Assuming we are operating in an efficient market where private and public partnership is fueling the growth, tell us what would be your plan or thought getting into ASEAN market, but using or creating a unified digital currency. Do you have that in your plans? Or
First and foremost, thank you for the new title, Godfather of Payment. Wow, now you give me unnecessary stress when I leave office. Godfather. Okay, first and foremost, we are very lucky to be ASEAN country. You look at even this MTM. We got so many wonderful agency or government agencies that actually a lot of technical as well as technological innovation, as well as promoting digital transformation. I think MDEC is doing a good job here by having all these events and things. Now, similarly, back into payment as well. A lot of people sees that, I got a lot of wish lists. How would I love when I travel one country to another? If I travel to Singapore, whatever wallet or money that I have in the phone, in this smartphone, I want to use it very seamlessly. So, let me share with the audience, payment is not just a service. Payment is actually an ecosystem where this ecosystem is so complex. Number one, is so complex. Number two, is heavily regulated. The reason is heavily regulated because it is money, right? Every government will be very concerned about the flow of money and so on and so forth. And that's the reason why with Financial Act, with even with PTPA, the Personal Data Protection Act, these three acts already is a huge act that actually govern the whole payment ecosystem. Now, this is within the country, but the moment you talk about intra-country, so you have to match one country regulation to another country regulation. So in order to make the entire ecosystem very seamless, there are a lot of fundamental and there are a lot of G to G understanding, as well as how this regulator work hand in hand to ensure that your money in the wallet is safe and your money when you travel out of the country is safe. And at the same time, the government want to give you the best rate. If you travel to Thailand, you want to use your ringgit in buying something in Thai baht. Now, all these things have to take in consideration. And of course, this whole ecosystem, beside the regulator like the central bank, involve the banking system, involve the card scheme system. Card scheme, what I mean is where people, credit card industry, Master, Union Pay, Diners, and so on and so forth. And all this ecosystem is a huge ecosystem. Now we even have the e-wallet, and e-wallet now is so convenient. This COVID-19 already proven to us that e-wallet is something here to grow, and of course the consumer will love it. Why? Look at today, 11/11. There's so many wallet players actually throw in a lot of good campaign fund, and this is actually benefit to the consumer. And I'm sure a lot of us has been buying through our payment gateway. We can see. I think today transaction will break our 20 years record in a day. And now come
Okay,
back.
dinner is on you, Mr. Chan. Dinner is on you.
Yes, no
Dinner
problem.
is on you today.
Back to your question is if the public and government, private and public to work together. Actually, what I'm trying to say is the government, the public sector already got the strong infrastructure ready. Let me share with you, like in Malaysia, we heard of PayNet. In PayNet or now with the with this RPP platform or platform like Do It Now, I'm sure you have heard of Do It Now, PayLah in Singapore, PromptPay. Now these are all government initiatives, and these initiatives are all done by the central government as well as the government initiative to push cashless society in individual countries. Now this is very important development. It's like the country or the government is building up the infrastructure. Let me give you a metaphor to explain this technical thing. Imagine Malaysia and Singapore, we are not connected physically by road or by sea or by air, without all the planes and without all the routes as well as the highway. we are not able to connect to Singapore physically. Similarly, in payment, you also need a switch or an infrastructure and this infrastructure have to be connected physically, or digitally, where this switch is connecting one country to another. And once the switch is connected, then you can pass through transaction. Now, I look at it is with all the countries.
Mr. Chan, fantastic. What you just said is fantastic. I think what you've done, I mean, you are, like I said, you're a very high achiever yourself. You literally covered my second question as well in my first question. So that's fantastic. But if I just want you to hold that thought on ecosystem, because we're going to come back to that. And that's really good stuff that what you said just now. And thank you for making my life easier, because you literally answered the second question already. And just for the panel, I'm also getting quite a number of questions coming through, really fun questions. But let's build on the concept of digital currency, what Mr. Chan was telling about, right? So last 3 days, or is it last 4 days, on November 7th, I read a Bloomberg report. If any one of you have watched the social network, and you notice the twins, the Winklevoss twins, right? So yes, I think on the 7th of November, Bloomberg reported that both of them actually made 1 billion each out of the Bitcoin currency, right? They bought something 2013 for 11 million, and they had a windfall. And Mr. Chan, this is something that you probably want to applaud. Easing central bank, easing central bank policies to allow them to actually capitalize on that. So, and also there was a bit of a worry that fiscal stimulus will debase the currency. So I have this wild theory that it could be the pandemic as well. Now people are looking at digital transactions. So I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Chan, with what you've just said, and also dinner. But speaking of the pandemic and impact on the industry and the Bitcoin concept that I've just introduced, Rafiq, merchant trade, right? You have the front row seat on cross-border money exchange, both online and offline, right? So I'm going to take the risk of sounding a bit unsympathetic here, but we know that there lies opportunities in the worst of conditions, right? So would you share with us how merchant trade right, either striving or thriving, and if you have discovered any nuggets of opportunity to be a market leader in ASEAN against the backdrop of COVID-19? I'm sounding heartless, but you know what I'm getting at here. Over to you.
Aiza, hope you can hear me. Yeah, I think the COVID-19 has, in Malaysia, the lockdown started in March. So that kind of, I suppose you may know that we have both the on-ground physical and also the digital channels that we offer. And as you intimated, our core business is in the remittance cross-border. But certainly when the COVID hit the country, as you can imagine from a foreign workers' perspective, they're all not allowed to go out and all that stuff. And there was a huge problem for the foreign workers in terms of remitting their money back. They tend to do it at least once a month. And as you know, there are about 2 million of registered foreign workers in our country. So I mean, during that pandemic, and obviously it's still ongoing in terms of the restrictions and all that, there was a surge. There was a real surge in the digital platform. At one time, about 90% of our volumes were going through the digital channels. Yeah, and wow. I think those levels are still elevated at the moment. But obviously, with the relaxation and all that, that obviously then is back to a certain extent back to what it was before. But still, the digital channel hasn't looked back. We have a fully digital remittance outfit in Singapore, and we're seeing the same thing. Yeah, as I think we have read a lot of the foreign workers were confined to their dormitories, and they have a lot of problems actually remitting back to their home countries, and millions. Yeah, I mean, Singapore and us, we are basically net outbound remittance countries. Yeah? We make outbounds on a yearly basis. For us, anyways, about 9 billion. Singapore is about 8 billion US. So there's a lot of money that has gone through the digital channel during this period.
So you see a lot of things happening around there. And you haven't really answered the questions. I'm going to prod you again. Nuggets of strategy. I know you can't really give your trade secrets away, but hey, help us out here. Mr. Chan is going on the unified currency. You, on the other hand, Western Trade has been trading multiple currency. So help us out here. Everybody wants to make money out of this. So what are the nuggets of strategy you see?
Well, I guess one of the things, obviously, at the end of the day, one of the things that we want to do as an organization, and as I mentioned, our core base of clients are the foreign workers. At the end of the day, obviously, as an organization and all our e-wallet parties, we want to offer something that's relevant to that particular segment, yeah, not just remittance, right?
Okay.
And when you are a sender in Malaysia and you're a worker from Bangladesh and you have a family member back in Dhaka or wherever, at the end of the day, I suppose one of the objectives is to make sure that we get connected to all these beneficiaries, right? And for us, I think if we can achieve that in one big network, I mean that would be ideal for us as an organization, where we're then connected regionally. If you can imagine, there are 2 million foreign workers here in Malaysia. There'll probably be 2 or 3 million beneficiaries in elsewhere around the region, right? If you can connect everybody together in one platform and get connected to the home country banks and work together with them, not only just remittance, but you can offer microloans and all that stuff and insurance through that digital platform. I mean, that will be wonderful.
You know what I hope to come out from this particular session? Suddenly a consortium of the three of you actually doing this. And Mr. Chan, I'm going to segue back to you because what Rafiz just mentioned, connectivity, that was when I had to pause you for a while because, I was getting excited listening to you, but in the back of my mind, I know that that's something that I want to ask Rafiz first. So the connectivity, like what Rafiz mentioned, networking, collaboration, if you move alone, you move slow. If you move together, you move fast. I mean, that's the adage of everything. But here's the thing, Mr. Chan. I would like you to actually help us out here a little bit, right? So you do payments. And today, that's like orang kaya lah, you're a rich man today. So right now, what I can see, the ecosystem, we've been having iterations and iterations and iterations. But are we really ready for this? Is on this point, yeah? The central banks of the ASEAN country, are they really talking? I mean, we have a very friendly government, I must say that, right? But I have done in my past, I've actually worked with, I'm not going to say the country, some banks in another country, and it's just never happened. Otherwise, I would have stayed in the bank, right? So are they really ready, Mr. Chan? Really? I mean, tell us.
I totally agree with Rafiq. As far as when the network is connected, there are so many players can form a consortium to make the unified currency, as you mentioned. But instead of straight away jump into unified currency, the current infrastructure by the central banks is already good enough for us to have a transition to a more complicated unified currency, the one ASEAN currency like Euro. Now, the current switch with the strength of people like merchant trade, what we can do is we can do the foreign exchange. The moment I use my ringgit in Thai baht, the platform or the switch are connected. All it takes is the conversion can be done at the switch without the consumer itself didn't even realize it. It's like the moment I buy a product in Thai baht, 100 Thai baht is about 11 ringgit, for example. Straight away, when I spend, I know that the exchange rate is around 11.1 or whatever. So I know that the moment my money deducted around 11 ringgit, I know it's a good rate. And normally G to G level, the exchange rate is always the best. Of course, merchant trade can jump in and say, we give you the best rate. And to the consumer is always benefit, because when you work at the switch, imagine you work at the toll gate, you actually work on the wholesale rate. When you talk about wholesale rate, exchange rate is always a volume game. So when you aggregate all the volume, the moment you talk to the other party in Ireland, so it's always you get the best rate. So with the best forex exchange and with the current switches ready, people like us, you and I, next time we travel seamlessly in ASEAN, and we can use whether our current wallet in Boost, in Touch and Go Pay, Grab Pay, you just name it, or even any bank account like Maybank QR. You see, the key is the entire payment ecosystem is already there to be ready. And now it's just on the implementation. Now, when you want to implement a seamless currency, you can either do it straight away, go to a unified currency, or you go for one step below. That means a transition period where you can have a mixture. It's just that you make the transaction to be seamless. So with all this new technology coming in, with the broadband, with 5G, I always look forward on 5G. And you see how powerful our smartphone is now. With all this technology in our hand, all these things can be done easily. And all it takes is the party involved in the ecosystem. You got people like merchant trade in the forex exchange. You got people payment gateway like us, iPay. You got Chris to provide all this white label of wallets. We are actually ready. You ask Chris, we are ready. You ask us, iPay is always ready. Merchant trade is waiting for it. In fact, it's a good opportunity for merchant trade, because why? Now merchant trade don't need to go to the retail and collect exchange money. Now you exchange at the gateway, at the switch. It's all about.
On that note, right, on that note, Chris, I know that you're raring to say this. Okay. The thing is, Chris, look, let's be frank here. The reason why I joined Boost from being a banker before, right, is one thing, because it is an environment of test and learn. Or one of our what do you call that? Our mantra, fail to learn, right? So we go into this experimentation, and it's always fun. So listening to Mr. Chan, listening to Rafiq, right? I have a question for you right now. I'm just putting a little different dimension here. So we are ready. We are ready completely, right?
Yes.
Now, what is it that you think would actually pull you back? What would be the parachute behind you that's pulling you back without letting you fly?
Wow, what's the parachute? I can think of 1,001 things, but I guess mainly is because while the infrastructure is ready, the whole process is ready, and I think looking at it, even the regulation wise are getting more and more open with regards to opening to talk about seamlessness and all. But I guess there's always a gap in terms of vision and implementation. And when you look into how fragmented the whole ecosystem is, and I'm using my experience in Japan as well, because when we deal with people from other countries, from Taiwan and Japan, we realize that while the law says something or the regulations are open to something, but when it's translated into action and is by the key different stakeholders, then it will be interpreted in a different way. And hence why there's a lot of friction, a lot of convincing, and a lot of education and whatsoever. And why I guess that a lot of the wallet, QR wallets like WeChat and Alipay chose the route that, okay, I do not want to link, I will control everything because it's faster. It's faster to control everything rather than to work with other people. But I look into this situation and with COVID and all, controlling everything is only a game that is blessed by a few. Most people will need to work together in a collaborative ecosystem, and I think based on even the current Bank Negara draft in terms of digital bank, they also talk about a consortium, and as you can see from Singapore side as well, they are building a consortium of partners to do, and I think collaboration and how to link together will work. But again, it comes back into the interpretation of the key stakeholders in terms of what can be done and how open are they to adopt this change, and which is the blessing of COVID.
I'm going to give you one term, and I hope this term, before I grow older, I hope you can live, breathe, and be known for this term, right? So we give Mr. Chan the godfather of payment. So this term is called fintechtualization of industry. Okay, I know it's a bit of a mouthful to say that, but what it is really is about you, Chris, with Soft State, literally putting fintech in across all industries. So I know a lot of people are looking at Singapore and saying all the good things about Singapore. But the thing is, Singapore, in terms of, and I had this discussion with Mr. Chan last night or yesterday, there are a lot of B2B and sophisticated users, right?
Yep.
But here in Malaysia, we have a mix of everything. So when it comes to fintechtualization of industry, and there's always this term called underbanked, underserved. So I think it's really beautiful to see how you relate your first question or the answers to the first question just now when you said that it's more technology, unit of economics, and segue that into fintechtualization of industry. But I'm going to be real. I'm going to be real, right? And I'm going to be very naughty a little bit. And I know this is recorded. But Rafiq, get ready. You're next. The think about, from my observation, from my experience, I feel that stakeholders within all this monetary ecosystem, right? Whoever they are, I mean, if the cat fits, right? There's always this cognitive dissonance, bias remorse. For example, I want to do this, but hey, hang on a minute. I'm going to do the unified QR first. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I'm going to have a sandbox. Oh, wait, there's only one that came out of it. So there's always this talk about wanting to go big, but there's that cognitive dissonance, that bias remorse, Chris. So for just 1 minute, before I move on to Rafiq, being a young player, how do you fight it? How do you fight the so-called feudalism?
I mean, I'm guessing that I don't want to say that I'm fighting the feudalism, because at the end of the day, I think the approach that we want to try is because if we think that they are our enemy, and if they are on opposite table, then there's always resistance. And I think the great thing I think that we want to empathize is that understanding what is the issue. And I do find, and I think from a principal point of view, I do find that people are genuinely good. People always are good at heart. I guess that they do not see your point of view, and they do not understand your point of view. And then I think if we can purely empathize on why are they resisting, there is a reason. And then it comes back to, is the reason valid, or if the reason are not valid? I mean, if it's because of economical benefit that they do not want to work with you, then let's move on. I do not want to work with, because there's nothing to go about it. But because of misunderstanding of how we can handle that, I think there's a lot of opportunities to actually go in. And I do feel that while this thing at the beginning is harder and harder, but the trend is coming that most parties are trying to work together. And looking at this situation, for most traditional companies, they have no choice. I mean,
you see, yeah, you know, everyone kept asking. Well, I got these questions a lot, and they ask me, "What is it that you want, Aiza?" So a lot of my friends answer money. I want wealth.
Yep.
But I think after looking at you and listening to you, what I really want is youth, my youth back. Because you are just so excited to do this. So I'm just going to go over to Rafiq right now. And fantastic, please keep that excitement going. Oh my God, I'm telling you, the industry.
Before that, can I jump in? Can I jump in a little bit? I want to add one point. You are mentioning the ecosystems are there, and people are not really accepting it and all these things. I think the entire payment ecosystems, there are many players, and every player in the ecosystem play their role. For example, for the entire ecosystem to accept certain payment, they need to have investment into the reader, into the equipment, and who going to invest this kind of money when the user are not readily to adopt the new payment. Now, why the user are not ready to adopt it? like the moment the facilities are there, I don't want to use that immediately because there is a fear of unknown because it's something new. Now, at the same time, we also know ecosystem from the wallet owner or the payment method owner. If they give certain incentive benefit to the user, it actually encourages the user to go and adopt the new payment faster without the fear. I mean, the fear can be overcome by benefits, all right?
Right.
And
Right.
when users are more ready to adopt, then payment company like us, like Priest, all this, we are willing to invest into the ecosystem where the merchants are willing to even give back benefit to the consumer as well. So it's all like one is like a domino effect. It's not like each player in the ecosystem play by itself. It have to be a teamwork within this ecosystem. Everybody must,
Okay.
I scratch your back, you scratch my back. Then it makes the ecosystems to be adopted easily.
Yeah, I'm going to quarrel with you on that, but I'm going to quarrel outside. Okay, so I'm going to take it outside. But Rafiz, I'm listening to Mr. Chan, and a great point that he made just now. You know, the ecosystem needs to be collaborative. I scratch your back, you scratch my back, quid pro quo. So I'm going back to my introduction of you earlier on. So we know where Mr. Chan is playing. We know where Chris is playing. And I've been reading up on merchant trade, and you have recently acquired Value. Is that how I say it? Value? Value. And then you've been playing in the cross-border money exchange. That's your value proposition. You seem to appear to be self-fulfilling the prophecy of becoming a neo or challenger bank. And we know that the draft is going to be out. It was delayed because of COVID from Bank Negara. It's going to be out soon. So tell us, are you thinking that way? Because it makes a lot of sense right now for you to do it.
I think well, this terminology, digital bank, neo bank, challenger bank, you know, after a while you get really confused when you start boxing all of us into boxes and calling. And now then there's payment banks in India and all that. At the end of the day, for us, and I think for many players out there in terms of the wallet and all that, while we do not want to be seen to be challenging the banks, but obviously there are pockets where, I mean, you and I know that banks have been around for many years, right? And there are reasons why they serve one particular community and don't do one particular community, because at the end of the day, they've built a certain amount of infrastructure, they've invested X amount of money. At the end of the day, you know, they go to where the ROI and ROE is best for them. And unfortunately, there are certain segments of which there will be gaps, and then obviously that's where the underserved and unserved are. For us, the objective is to actually make sure that whatever we do, we're actually complementing the banks. So when we talk about financial inclusion and we talk about working together and innovation, and we talk about, you know, collaboration and all that, and you mentioned the word fintechtualization. Wow, managed to say that in one breath. Fintechtualization. I think at the end of the day, I mean, that really is it in order for us to actually get everybody connected, right? And making sure that this agenda, and not just an ASEAN agenda, it's a global agenda, and even in advanced countries like the US and Europe and all that, there are unbanked people, right? So the whole idea is to actually create technology that is efficient, cheap, and ubiquitous. And obviously that, you know, the device, our mobile device has made that possible, right? And the platform, the mobile platform has made that possible. And so for us, at the end of the day, when we try and reach out to the unbanked and the underserved community, and it's very large still in Malaysia, although, as we all know, most of us have a bank account. I think about 80, close to 90% of us have a bank account, but there are still underbanked people. at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is that to make sure that whatever, we're talking about underinsured people, people who don't do investments and all that. We have bank accounts, but not necessarily everybody does insurance, etc. So for us, it's really having a platform, and we are talking about the foreign worker community just now. Not only do they want to do remittance, but they also want to do wealth creation, right? They don't have a lot of money, but at the end of the day, while they're here in Malaysia, be it 3 years, 5 years, other than remitting money back home, there is also the desire to, before they go home, to actually have created some wealth, right?
Yes.
And we're talking about micro investments here. So at the end of the day, yes, while remittance is a core product on that platform, we obviously want to provide other things that will complement their lifestyle for that particular relevant group of people.
Thank you, guys. I mean, gentlemen, you would not believe the number of questions that are coming through for all of you. But I think some of the questions are already answered by Chris, and there were questions about the ecosystem, Mr. Chan. So I'm just going to pick one or two questions that I thought would actually, give a bit of a different perspective. And just so you know, we've got about 5 minutes left. Guys, for the ones that we just logged in, don't worry about it. These are recorded sessions. You can go back and actually watch it. And really, thank you for all the questions. There are some of the questions that I could not cover because, along the way, the panelists actually answered that. So there's one question that I thought is quite interesting. So, Mr. Chan, you're making money today. And Rafiz, you're making money literally the entire COVID-19 with the exchange. And Chris, you're in the business of making money. So FinTech, what we are discussing today is barely scratching the surface of FinTech, right?
Yep.
There's so many layers to it, dimensions to it, investments and whatnot. But here's the thing. Have we done enough for social impact? Maybank just launched an FD that would give about 30 cents, something like that, out of whatever that you get from the FD, the interest, into merchants that had been, not interest, sorry, I would say, well, there's a system for it. Let's not just use interest. Anything that you earn from the FD to merchants which are affected by COVID. So I just want to hear very quickly from the three of you, because we are in the interest of time. Do we think we have enough? Have you done enough? Do you think you could do more? It's not about capitalistic. So go.
I think we haven't done enough, to be very frank. But what we have been doing, and I believe many other players within this ecosystem, everybody was so affected by this COVID-19, especially the merchants. Immediately, what we did was for iPay, we actually came out with a very innovative service called email payment, where we actually reduce a lot of steps to onboard this merchant. It's like they need a digital payment straight away, to collect money from the customer. So what we did was we actually make it so much easier for the merchant to use that service. That's number one.
But that's the onboarding part, right? You
yes,
are making
onboard
it
the
easy
merchant
for the
because,
onboarding part. Okay,
there's a lot of KYC involved. And as I said, all these services are governed by all these acts, all these financial acts, and so on and so forth. So
fantastic. Mr. Chan, let me just go over to Chris right now, because what you just said is very interesting. It's onboarding, so it's technology around it. So Chris, social impact, soft space. Have you got plans for it?
Of course, I think, and when we look into it, there's certain segment of the market, like ASEAN is very different from Kuala Lumpur, and of course Singapore as well, like Cambodia. Definitely from a technology point of view, we can do things better. And when we look into it, we always think about, okay, some people call it the bangsa bubble, where, you focus on a certain segment, where you know the financial literate and all those kind of things. But I do feel that the focus should, for a proper ASEAN fintech player, they also should focus on there is different segments of markets that might behave very differently. They might care for things that are very different. And I think technology is also one part. I guess the platform for other parties to combine to serve this market is more important than having one player to go directly to serve it. I think that the collaborative method is also part of it. And I guess everyone has a responsibility to actually focus and say, look, we cannot just focus for it from a social impact perspective or from a profitability or from a range perspective. You need to look into, there's so many people in ASEAN and none of them, most of them are not like the city folks, right? So, I mean,
yeah. I think our friend Rafiz from Merchant Trade is playing in that area. Rafiz,
Yes.
I mean, your clients are all under bank or underserved segment. And I'm always very careful. I mean, this is me being provocative. At times when it's underbanked segment and, underserved, you get access to the product, but there's always that hidden piece inside everything because everyone needs to make money, right? So those segment is volume based. So tell me, are you doing enough for social impact and what are your plans?
Oh, I mean, we're never enough, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we know as ASEAN, there's 600 million of us, 5 to 600 million. And a lot of us, there's a fair amount, there's a huge population of communities out there that's underbanked and underserved, right? When we're talking about social impact for us as an organization, it's right front and center to ensure that whoever that we serve, and we as you know, that we tend to serve quite a bit of the migrant market. The whole intention is to make sure that these bunch of people, this huge community in ASEAN, is able to create a footprint, a credit history, together with their family members back in Bangladesh, back in India and Pakistan, to actually then start to become bankable. I mean, there are banks out there, high street banks that won't touch them. I mean, for whatever reason, right? But there is clearly players like us who will want to serve them because we feel that there is an opportunity for us to make sure that we have a very impactful delivery to their family unit back in Nepal, back in Indonesia, back in Philippines, right? And so that they then have that track record to become bankable going forward, right? So really, it's really to be able to actually start that history, that experience for them as a community to then be able to have footprints, in order for them then to create the ability then to move up the social ladder and then to actually then create wealth, right, for themselves.
Yeah. You're starting, you're literally building the unit to be something that's going to become bankable rather than they stay to be underserved. Well, gentlemen, guys, whoever that has been logged out, you've been to everyone that has logged in. We are, on behalf of the speakers, if you don't mind me telling them this, we have to apologize. I mean, I wish we have 2 hours for this particular session because it's so interesting. And with the titans of technology, FinTech, there should be another session for this. With your permission, gentlemen, I'm just going to give a couple of points to the ones that are listening to all of you. So today we've actually talked about technology. Chris, thank you so much for giving us an idea of what's coming our way and having that useful enthusiasm to just say, let's work together on this, let's be together on this, let's move together on this. Piper, Malaysian companies leading into ASEAN. Rafi, thank you so much. I mean, I know that I've been very provocative a little bit, trying to find out what is your next strategy. But I think you've done very well in just telling us a bit of the surface of what you're doing. I'm on the observation deck where Merchant Trade is concerned. So I'm gonna wait for fantastic things that's gonna happen from Merchant Trade. So you've also told us, the audience, in terms of the opportunity that lies in everything that is not going right with the country and also globally with the pandemic. So there are some opportunities which you would try and change it into social impact. Mr. Chan, we learned so much from you today, right? You've talked about ecosystem. You actually answered 2 questions in one go. That is something that I was already expecting from you anyway, the wisdom that you have. Congratulations on all the transactions that's happening on the 11/11. Thanks to this panel, I think I've just lost something in my cart. But anyways, what I would like to send across a message to everyone that's listening. I mean, we need to re-energize back the economy. But when it comes to digital economy, we need to really embrace it and go for it and literally work with merchant trade, IP88, and soft space to really make this a true economy, right? Because we can't waste time anymore. It's real. It's very, very real. I was in it for a while, and actually for a long while. And where it is before and now, it's far, but we can go further. So with that, gentlemen, I apologize to everyone that's logged in. I mean, you have a lot of questions. I couldn't get through and get all of them in this forum, but I'm pretty sure that you can have a chat and connect with the panels and ask the questions point blank to them, and they'll be more than happy to answer. So Mr. Chan, thank you so much for your time. Rafiq, you can go back to your board paper now. Chris, you can go back to doing all the crazy stuff and all the technology wizardry. And to Knowledge Group of companies and as well as MPAC, thank you for having us. Stay safe, everybody. Wear a mask and don't go out if it's not necessary to do that. Flatten the curve. Bye, everybody.
Yeah,
Bye.
Thank you very much, Aiza and the three panelists, for an excellent presentation. I think it was part brainstorming and part educational as well. And one of the key things that I think for me was a takeaway was the fact that these three companies actually compete with each other in some areas, but there's actually a lot of room for them to collaborate with each other. Something for all of us to think about. Let's now move on to the next session that will begin shortly. Please click Join Session.